who have sifted through tens of thousands of questions and petitions from President. They know the public sentiment. They will work with President today, and they will help President outline the topics that are high on the agenda. So, please, over to you. A very good morning. We're on air, the outcomes of the year with Vladimir Putin. You could have asked your question in several ways, and you can still do so till the end of the program. Can we keep receiving and processing messages? You can ask by phone 800 240 40. You can send an SMS or an MMS message 04040. You can ask questions via social media of Kontakty or Odnoklasniki, and there's a website moskva-putin.ru. You can also ask a question via that site. Now we have more than 2.2 million questions. 1.2 come from phone calls, 43 SMS messages, and 140 people ask their question on the website. And the number keeps growing, as we see in real time. There are some very curious numbers with respect to this format. Previously, we had a separate phone in a separate press conference, and this hybrid format has been held for the third time. First of all, it started during COVID, and then it continued in 2023 and 2024. This hybrid format allows both media representatives and common people ask their questions. With respect to statistics, the maximum number of questions in 2015 was 2,250,000 questions. Now the number is lower, but this is probably due to the fact that there are some regional phone-ins, and governors cover part of the regional agenda. It's noteworthy that if we sum up all the time that Mr. President took to respond to questions, there would be more than 64 hours in total. Phone-ins from the regions, we've had them since the outset, since 2001, and today we will have some of them. Over the time span of the phone-in and the press conference, we've seen a lot of activity on the part of people sending questions, letters and requests and words of gratitude also. And now it's 19th of December, probably warm wishes with respect to the forthcoming new year are sent. We have selected some of the questions. Most of them are on welfare and social matters, on the special military operation, and there is a set of international topics also. So we begin. President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. Please welcome. So it's the third year while preparing this program and processing the questions. The volunteers of the All Russian People's Front have been participating in that, and now the veterans of the special military operation have also joined in throughout the 10 days since the phone calls have been received. They also have participated, but today the People's Front's work is not finished. After the broadcast, they will continue processing the questions and petitions so that no one is left behind. And let me note that while preparing for the outcomes of the year program, we have been able to resolve part of the issues by the volunteers together with the regional and local and federal authorities. There is one more feature typical of this year. A GigaChat AI software from Sberbank. And I already got to know that, yes. So GigaChat is a technology that helps decipher and convert sound to text, and definitely single out the main part of the gist of the petitions and the questions, and you'll be able to see the main topics in this screen, and this virtual assistant will help us in the course of the program. But before we start asking the questions from the people and the mass media, just a general question on my part to begin with. We feel that the world has either gone crazy or is going mad. The conflict potential is soaring. The global economy is in a difficult, dire situation. How is Russia managing to keep afloat and keep growing? You know, when everything is calm and tranquil and stable, we're bored. Well, it's stagnation. We want some commotion. As soon as some commotion starts, and we see bullets whistling and time flying rapidly, we get scared to our wits. Well, it's horrible. It's a great deal of horror. But you know, it's actually not. It's all about the economy, and we start with the economy. Despite your provocative question, the economy underlies everything. It's the main foundation, prescribing and determining the living standards of our people and the stability and the defensive capability. Everything is based on the economy. And the economic situation in this country, by and large, is normal, is stable. We keep advancing against all odds, despite external threats and attempts to impact us. Last year, the economic growth was at 3.6% in annualized terms, and this year it's going to be at 3.9 or even 4%. We'll have to double-check that, because at the end of the year, well, we will see some numbers, and we will recap in the first quarter 2025.
And probably the level will even be 4%, meaning that over the 4 years, the economic growth amounted to about 8%. According to experts with whom I've exchanged opinions this morning, over the past years, the figure is, as I said, it was 5.6% in the US and 0.0% in the EU. In the leading European economy, the economic growth amounts to 0, and it is estimated to be so in the coming year too. International financial institutions, economic institutions, placed Russia number 1 in Europe in terms of purchasing power parity, and it ranks number 4 in the world. China, the US, India are ahead of us, and we are ahead of Germany. We were ahead of Germany in the past year too, and this year we are ahead of Japan. But you know, it is not something that we should take for granted, that we should relax. Everything is in the motion, everything is moving forward and advancing. If while the European zone, the Eurozone is falling asleep, it doesn't mean that there are no other economic centers that are emerging. In the United States, the situation is evolving, so we have to keep this ratio, we have to change the quality of our economy, and there are other figures and indicators which are satisfactory, to put it mildly. One of the most serious figures and indicators for all economies of the world is the unemployment level, and it is at a record low in our country at 2.3%. It is unseen. It hasn't been seen before. It is number 1. Point 2. There is a growth in some industries. The industrial growth amounts to 4.4%, and processing industry is growing at a ratio of 8.1%. In some industries, some branches, the growth is even higher. inflation rate is an alarming signal. While I was preparing for today's press conference, I spoke to the governor of central bank. According to Ms. Nabiulina, inflation is now at 9.3, 9.9, but the income of the population has grown too. So on the whole, the situation is stable. We have some problems with inflation. The economy is a bit overheated. The government and central bank has set themselves the goal of decreasing this ratio, and according to various estimates, it is expected to be at 2 or 2.3% in order to preserve the macroeconomic indicators. It is something we should seek to achieve, and we are going to discuss it in more detail during today's press conference. But on the whole, the situation is stable. There is one clarifying question, if you allow. You cited Germany and Japan as an example. I would like to speak about Germany. You said the economic growth is at 0%, but it was previously a center of economic growth. Does it have to do with the politics and the sovereignty? Because recently at the Russia Calling Forum, you said that when you celebrated the Gerhard Schröder's anniversary, all songs were sung in English, and there were no German songs. Yes, they were. It was a long time ago. Mr. Schröder celebrated his anniversary, and he invited me, and I attended. There was a small concert, and everyone sang songs in English, and I said even a choir of girls from Hanover presented songs in English, but there was one troupe that sang songs in German. It was the Cuban Cossack Corps. It was unexpected for me. I asked them how they learned this song, and they said, out of respect to the Germans, out of respect to the hosts, we learned this song during our travel, and we presented it in German. Later, I was approached by many guests. I'm telling you how it was, and many people told me we are ashamed. We are ashamed that only Russian Cossacks sang in German. And I said it to my colleague who was present at that forum. I told him sovereignty is an important thing. It should be deep in your heart. And I believe in the post-war era, the German people no longer feel their sovereignty. Who are Europeans? They are proud of being Europeans. But above all, they are French, German, Italian, Spanish, and only after that they are Europeans. But instead, they try to polish things, and in the end, you see it impacting everything, including economy. I mentioned the economic growth in our country, and largely it is the result of strengthening of our sovereignty that is projected on the economic situation. Many producers lost our market. Where does it bring us? Our industrialists started producing these same products. It necessitated various research, so we involved various institutions, including development institutions. And on the whole, it translated into the strengthening of our technological sovereignty. There might be different sovereignty in the fields of education, industry, military. It is important for our country, and for our country it is of particular importance, because if we lose sovereignty, we lose our statehood. That's crucial. And strengthening the sovereignty is also a result of economic growth. Mr. President, now I suggest that we move on to questions from our citizens. You mentioned the economic growth. Indeed, if we look at the economic figures, they look all right. Most of Russian plants are working tight, but the payments are below the inflation. We have made a rating of regions in which citizens asked most questions about price growth. It was in Kamchatka, in Sakhalinsk region, and in the most western region of our country, in Kaliningrad Oblast. And the price growth was a relevant question in Irkutsk. I will add some more figures. Our GigaChat provides us with some statistics. Most popular questions had to deal with price growths of bread, fish, and butter. They also ask about growing fuel prices, and those are just a few question categories that we have seen. And according to Rosstat, the Russian statistics body, we see that fruit and vegetable prices have grown by 3.4% over the past week. In particular, cucumbers got 10% higher, and the price grew by 43% over the past 10 months since November. Those who are following our work via internet may know that when I spoke about the economic growth, the price growth, and high inflation rate, but apart from that, there is income growth and the growth of salaries. Well, we have a vast country, and some people might say, how can we speak about the welfare growth? But at the same time, some people would say that the income was reduced. But I'm speaking about the average figures. When we plan something, we have to base on something, and we cannot base on anything else but average figures. As for the price growth, there are objective things and subjective things. Objective things are the following, and most crucially, the supply on the market should be in line with the purchasing power of the citizens, and it should be also in line with the volumes of produced products. But production growth was higher in our country than the income growth. Let me give you an example. Food production is growing constantly in our country. If we have some questions in agriculture, we might go into detail, but I'll tell you already now, plus 3% annually. In terms of meat production, we completely cover our demand. It is a good figure. But why is it so? Meat consumption per year is at about 80 kilos per person, while it is 42 kilos in the world. It is an average in the world. It would seem that it is enough, but at the same time, the meat consumption has doubled over the recent time. Doubled. As for milk, annually the milk production is growing, but milk consumption is growing too. It is not enough in order to produce butter. And I know that the growth of butter prices amounts to 33–34% in some regions, and it might be even higher in other regions. The consumption has grown faster than the production. There is a second objective reason, yes, and we have to change the situation in the industry. There is another objective reason, that is a growth of prices of certain products in the world, and there are sanctions and restrictions. They are not playing a decisive role, but they have their impact because they make logistics more expensive. And there are objective reasons too. Like some experts believe that the central bank could be more effective and efficient, and it could have started using certain instruments not related to the growth of interest rate a bit earlier. Yes, central banks started doing so in summer, but according to some experts, it should have been and could have been done a bit earlier. There are lots of reasons. I'm not going to list all of them and bore our audience with all these considerations related to various ways of regulations by the central bank. As for the government, it is working efficiently. I'm quite satisfied with its performance, and it is doing a lot. When it looks into the future, we always should look into the future. Even in the hardest and the most severe times of the Great Patriotic War, we know of such examples. People were looking into the future, and it was the right thing to do, as it turned out later. That's what our government is doing. It sets out national development goals, national projects, and so on. That's great. But it would be not bad to work with the industries, to think about the development of certain industries of such products or for which there is a broad demand. Probably there will be questions related to specific industries, and timely decisions have to be taken. It is an unpleasant thing to say, and it is bad. Price growth is something bad. But I hope that on the whole, while preserving the macroeconomic figures, we'll be able to tackle this as well. Mr. President, we have a mixed format today. The direct line is a press conference, and I suggest that we now give the floor, and we see that the audience is willing to ask questions. Yes, indeed. Mr. Peskov, well, if we do what you propose, it will mean disrespect to the others.
All our historical tales need to be promoted, and I often watch those with my junior family members, and we'll try to respond that positively. Okay, dear friends, when you ask 2 questions in a row, you deprive some of your colleagues the opportunity to ask a question. Let's go that way. Let's move that way. Well, let's see, Krasnoyarsk, probably, the city of Krasnoyarsk. Good day, Yenisei channel, Dmitry Novikov, Krasnoyarsk. Mr. President, you have called Krasnoyarsk to be the center of Russia. Now we are getting ready. Just apologize for interrupting. It wasn't me who called. It's the geographic center of Russia, Krasnoyarsk. And we're getting ready to mark our 400th anniversary in 2028. And using the opportunity, would like to invite you to visit the anniversary. But my question is, now Rushydro headquarters is moving to Krasnoyarsk at your behest, and probably it will be coherent to prompt other state-run and private companies to move to the region, which would give new tax revenues and opportunities. Do you contemplate and entertain such opportunities? Well, first of all, I believe it is a proper way to do, and possibly some of the federal authorities should migrate to different regions. That would prompt and boost the development of our government. We're trying to concentrate all the judicial power in St. Petersburg, and that kind of separates the judicial branch of power from the presidential branch of power, making the former one more independent. And some of the functions of the capital city are transferred to St. Petersburg, and other big centers of our country, like Krasnoyarsk, also need more attention, having more revenue and companies paying taxes on site, and that would encourage the region's development. And you have mentioned Rushydro. Indeed, when I blessed the future CEO Ukhmarin, I just asked him, will you be ready to move to Krasnoyarsk? Yes, and your wife, she would agree, but that takes time. You know, one needs to move the manpower there, and people don't want to leave Moscow, not because they're lazy, but, you know, they are ingrained in Moscow with schools and kindergartens, and you need to train staff on the ground, and still Rus Hydro will be moving, and we will prompt more big companies and governmental bodies to move to other parts of Russia. We have the biggest land mass in the world, and major manufacturing companies should be spread evenly across the country, as well as governmental bodies. But, you know, there are some limitations, like president and the government should be next to each other to interact properly. Yes, thank you for the invitation to visit Krasnoyarsk. Some of the businessmen suggested moving the capital to Krasnoyarsk. Yes, or Irkutsk, and Peter the Great wanted to have a capital, the capital in the south, to move the capital in the south. He had two options, either St. Petersburg or a city in the south, in Taganrog. Well, originally he wanted to install the empire's capital in Taganrog. I can see Andrei Rudenko, a military correspondent of ours from Donetsk. I can't but give the floor to him. Mr. President, I've been around in Donbas since 2014, and I had a state TV company, Donetsk, and my question is quite serious. Across Donbas and Kherson and Zaporozhye region, a great deal of reconstruction is in progress, but still war is waged and there is a lot of fighting, and the enemy has been destroying our settlements. Will we have enough capabilities and funds to fully restore the historical lands that we have returned? No doubt, without a doubt, we will have the necessary capabilities and resources. We have a huge program in place to restore these territory. This program is valid until 2030, and work is underway on a number of spheres, like the road network reconstruction, the housing reconstruction and construction, public utilities, reconstruction, cultural and social sites. Also, with respect to roads, in 3 years we plan to bring all the roads there to the national Russian standards. And please have a seat. And you know that this is ongoing, and there's an undertaking that is being implemented already. We are planning to build a circular ring road around the Azov Sea, which is now an inland sea of the Russian Federation. And it will be similar to Taurida trunk road in the Crimea, of 4 lanes, with all the advantages of such a high-speed road. The first segment has been built from Taganrog to Mariupol, a segment of 40 kilometers, a short one, but we actually plan a road around the Azov Sea, another road connecting Mariupol and Donetsk, which is 197 kilometers long, also is in the pipeline, and all the road network will be restored, and all the necessary funds have been envisaged, and some of the welfare and social facilities have been put into operation. In Donetsk, the perinatal, a world-class perinatal center has been commissioned. In Mariupol, a medical center was opened. In the south, in the Zaporozhye region, a children's clinical hospital is planned it was the behest of the local residents, and the governor also supported that, and the design is already launched. And so have a lot of work planned till 2030. And now we have already reconstructed 21,000 facilities. 11,000 facilities were reconstructed with the help of the federal funds, and 10,000 installations were done with the funding of the patron regions from across the Russian Federation. And I'd like to thank in the leadership and the residents of those patron regions while we are in the air. And we are to reconstruct 20,000 facilities more in the near future, and all that will be accomplished. And Mr. President, with respect to Lugansk People's Republic, during the rule of Ukraine, they never had good roads. Now they have perfect roads all across that republic, and people are wholeheartedly grateful. These are the basic, most necessary things, and we'll do more. We'll go beyond that. And as regards the new regions, I'd like to address the residents and all other Russian nationals, while we have the live broadcast, that these regions have a very good potential to unlock, and potential and prospective tax revenues might be huge. And Lugansk region has seen a 97% growth in tax revenues collected. In Donbas, the growth is at 69%. I mean, the revenues collection. In Zaporozhye and Kherson, the growth is measured by hundreds of percent. Although the base figures were much lower, still they have grown by 200% in each of the regions. So the tax base is good and solid, and they are restoring it at a quick pace, and they are becoming self-sufficient. We definitely need to prop them up and back them and support them, and we will keep doing so. The entire country will do so until they are fully, no de jure, but de facto economically and socially integrated. You are now speaking about taxes. Is it about tax collection? Yes, it's about tax collection in these regions. I might be a bit mistaken in figures, but with respect to Donetsk, the growth has been at 79%. In Lugansk, they increased the tax revenues by 90-something%, and in Kherson and Zaporozhye regions, the growth of tax revenue collection was at around 2,000%, and the base levels were lower, but still they are growing faster. With respect to the new regions, lots of questions are coming from them, including on pension calculations and reckoning. The labor track record during the Ukrainian period is not taken into account, and they don't have the documents. And now a video address from a pensioner, Shepilov. I am Shepilov Leonid Nikolaevich, a pensioner from Krasny Liman. I have the work track record, the labor track record of 45 years, and now I live in Donetsk with my daughter, and Krasnolimansk is in hostilities. And my house got burnt, and my labor track record register also got burnt, and the only document I have is the certificate 5POK. In July this year, I submitted it to the pension fund of the Kalinin district of the Donetsk region. Please, I still received no answer. Please help me sort it out. Leonid Nikolaevich, these are actually day-to-day real problems of people. You need to confirm your job track record. but not long ago, a law was passed that all the time in employment, years of work, a work record will be taken into account. So the law is on your side. Even if you have no documents at hand, witnesses may come in handy, as well as decisions by regional commissions also may be made. And I'd like to ask the authorities of the region to assist resolving such questions, such issues without any red tape. Not long ago, I talked with Mr. Pushilin, head of the People's Republic of Donetsk, and he told me how he received a delegation from Africa, and we were happy to receive our guests and friends, and he's going to go to Africa also, which is good.
We have to support the relations, but I would like to remind you that there is also a limit.
We also have other people who could focus on this, so hopefully the work of inter-region governmental commissions will be fine-tuned. And I'd like to repeat this one again. We have adopted federal law to this tune, so now we have a legislation to make it work. We have a lot of questions about lost documents and about education, about property. And I'm sorry, I've already mentioned all these matters can be resolved by the rulings of the Interagency Commission and the evidence from the witnesses. I'm not speaking about some trials in court, but just receiving information from neighbors or from colleagues and so on. Another important issue is the housing issue, and we received a lot of phone calls from Mariupol, from those who were expecting to get compensated, but they did not receive anything. We need the help in Mariupol for the compensation, for how long we will have to rent an apartment. The houses were completed in the springtime, but we couldn't move in yet, so a lot of questions like that as well. We pay a lot of attention to Mariupol, and they deserve this. It's a large city, but before the hostilities, its population officially was some 430,000 people. The local authorities say that that was not true, that it had bigger population of 470,000 people. Well, it might be the truth. And they have some 3,000 multi-story residential houses. I visited the city and I know this, and colleagues travel there regularly, and some 1,800 houses were restored. Not all of them were commissioned because there is still some paperwork to be completed, but these houses are already there. And here's what's happening there. So some of the houses are being restored, and the other houses are being built from scratch. Those houses that cannot be restored, they are razed to the ground, and then the local authorities give these lots of land to developers, and they build commercial housing units that one can buy using 2% mortgage loans, because these mortgage loans interest works for the new territories as well, and there is a certain construction boom happening in there. And in Mariupol, according to our estimates, at least 300,000 people returned to Mariupol, and the population continues to grow rapidly. And we take care of roads and of schools and of the healthcare facilities, the leisure time facilities, and so on, and educational institutions, and we will continue with this effort. But as for the housing, once again, I would like to repeat, there are some houses that were transferred to developers, but the citizens, they have the right to receive housing at least near to the place where they used to live. It would be better to receive a place in the same building if it is being restored, or if a developer is building a housing unit on this spot, that we need to do everything to make sure that these people received their housing not on the outskirts, but next to the neighborhood where they used to live. And there are some vacant apartments that are still sitting vacant, and have told the authorities that we need to distribute it among the people who need housing, and all these matters have to be resolved. And one thing I can say for sure, everyone who has the right for being compensated, they will receive this compensation. If not, if this did not happen, then please approach the local authorities, local agencies, or the federal authorities, because these centers to make such decisions, I believe they are located there. They have been established. They are there. And the street is called Bucket Hill Street, so that's where it is, its headquarters. Speaking of the southern regions, I would like to mention the environmental situation. After 2 tankers crashed in the Strait of Kerch, and there is a lot of oil that was washed ashore near Anapa, and now it's being spread to Gelendzhik, and the situation is getting worse. And now the Emercom employees, volunteers, regular citizens are now volunteering to help with the cleaning effort, and they are making videos, and they send some of these videos to us, so we can give it a look. Anapa and the Anapa region have never seen anything like this. The entire shoreline is covered in oil. So many dead birds, dead animals that are getting washed ashore. And every new wave is bringing more and more dead animals. And now they were washed ashore our sandy beaches. The volunteers could not do everything by themselves here. So this is the really horrifying footage from the resorts, from the beaches. You have already instructed the Emercom to deal with this disaster. Can we put up more effort? Of course, it's a tragedy, environmental tragedy, which is obvious. And the law enforcement agencies are now trying to look into what the captains of those tankers were doing. I was reported that according to their assessment, the captains, they violated the rules. They did not look for shelter, because some vessels did, and they didn't get anchored where they were supposed to. But it's up to the transportation ministry and law enforcement agencies to look into that, to deal with that. I don't know what's happening right now, but yesterday the storm 4-5 points strong was ongoing there, and it was really hard to work. And it's supposed to get calmer on Saturday, and secondly, 40% of the fuel, of the oil, leaked out, spilled. So some of the tankers are almost drowned, some were drowned completely, some were washed ashore near the beaches. So all this work has to be coordinated with the Natural Resources Ministry, Transportation Ministry, the Emercom, the rescuers. This effort must be coordinated. I asked the head of the government to organize a task force headed by the Vitaly Savelyv, Deputy Prime Minister for Transportation Matters, and all these services are functioning, and I receive regular reports on what's happening. We will need to investigate what the condition of the tankers, and we will need to think what to do in the near future, because this issue must be structured into various stages. The first stage is now we need to do everything to minimize the losses, not to allow this spill to spread. And secondly, we need to do everything to remove that fuel, that oil that is getting washed ashore. The day before yesterday, Governor Kondratyev was reporting to me, and he said that there is some 4,000 strong crew working there. And that's what he told me, that we do not need any additional assistance, but if we need such assistance, we will send more Emercom employees there. But that's what needs to be done now, because this oil, this oil products, it turns into a solid state when it's cold enough, and you need to remove it from the shore. But in May, some part of this oil, because some of it is already on the bottom, and when the temperature gets higher in May, it can get raised to the surface again, and we need to prepare for this already now. We need to prepare for the moment when the sea temperature gets higher, and we need to think about this now. What should we do when it happens? Or what should we do to bring the tankers, drowned tankers, back to the surface, to the shore? We need to strengthen them to make sure there is no more spillage, and we need to establish, to start an effort to drag these tankers to the shore, and the government is looking into that. I really hope that we will not waste any time to make it work. A couple of questions from the audience, please. Mr. President, if you don't mind, I see our American colleagues, journalists from the U.S. here. I see NBC right in the middle of the middle sector, please.
President Keir Simmons from NBC News. Two questions in English, if you don't mind. Sorry, Mr. Peskov. The first one is about President-elect Trump. Mr. President, you have failed to reach the objectives of your special military operation. Large numbers of Russians have died, including a general assassinated here in Moscow this week. And the leader of Syria, who you supported, has been overthrown. Mr. President, when you face President-elect Trump, you will be the weaker leader. How do you propose to compromise? What are you going to offer? And my second question, Mr. President, is this. The mother of an American journalist who is missing in Syria, Austin Tice, has written to you and asked for your help to try to find him, because she says you have such connections with the Syrian government and former President Assad. Are you prepared to ask President Assad for information about what happened in Syria to try to find the missing, including this American journalist?
Once again, if you could repeat your question, where he went missing? Where did he disappear? What happened to this journalist?
A letter here sent to you this week by the mother of an American journalist who is missing in Syria. He's been missing for 12 years. He's called Austin Tice. And in this letter, she is asking for your help to try to find him, because she says you have such close connections to the former Syrian government, to President Assad. Will you ask President Assad for information about the missing in Syria and about Austin Tice, this woman's son? She says she's prepared to come to Moscow if it will help to find out anything she can about her son.
Я понял. Если вам сказать честно, садитесь, пожалуйста.
Well, okay, I understand it now. To be frank, I have not met President Assad yet after his arrival to Moscow. But I have such plans. I will speak to him for sure, but we are grown-ups. We understand that 12 years ago, a person went missing in Syria. 12 years ago. We understand what the situation was 12 years ago. It was an active war zone. The factions from both sides were involved in the hostilities, so whether President Assad knows what happened to this American journalist who was there on fulfilling his journalistic duties in a war zone, but I will ask this question for sure. I promise you that. Just as we can ask this question to those people who are controlling the situation on the ground in Syria today, you ask what can we or what can I offer re-elected President Trump when we meet? Well, first of all, I don't know when we meet, because he doesn't say anything about this. I have not spoken to him for more than 4 years, but I'm open for it anytime. I'm open for a meeting, for a summit, if he wants to. You said that this conversation will take place when I'd be in a weaker position. My dear colleague, my esteemed colleague, and why am I calling you an esteemed colleague? That despite all the persecutions against our media in the West, you can work freely in here, and you know that well. So yourself and the people who pays your salary in the West really want to see Russia weakened. But I subscribe to another point of view. I believe that Russia has become much stronger over the last 2 or 3 years. Why is that? Because we're becoming a truly sovereign country. We are not dependent on anyone, basically, anymore. We can confidently stand our ground in the economy-wise. I have already mentioned our economic growth. We are strengthening our defense military capabilities. The combat readiness of our troops, and I can speak confidently, is at the highest level in the world. So these are the most capable troops. The same goes for the defense industries. We are enhancing the production of everything that our army and our navy needs, both for now and for the future. And we are doing that confidently, rapidly. And you cannot say that about our adversary. We have already mentioned the successes of the accomplishments of our armed forces, and it is largely happening due to the growth of the defense industry production growth. And we are doing this. Again, we do this confidently, and we are acting rationally in this regard. So we said that our troops are advancing along the line of engagement. Why is that happening? Among other things, because there is equipment that I've mentioned, there are vehicles that I've mentioned. Practically all the NATO countries are fighting against us. And, okay, we mentioned inflation in Russia, but what's happening in there? For 11 years, the ammo 155. 2 years ago, it was 2,000 euro. Now it's 8,000 euro. So its price has grown 4 times. If it goes like this, continues to go like this, then not only 2% of the military expenses, something that the re-elected president of the U.S., Mr. Trump, is insisting upon. 2%, not only 2%, but even 3% of the military expenses would not be enough for the NATO countries. So training, combat readiness, the spirit, the morale of the Russian armed forces. No other army in the world has all of this to the same extent. So I believe that Russia largely is in the shape that we were looking for. It got stronger. It has become a truly sovereign country. And we will make decisions without looking at someone else's opinions. We will only take our national interests in consideration. You've mentioned Syria. Oh, for yourselves and for those who pay your salary, they want to present everything happening in Syria as some kind of Russia's defeat, Russia's failure. But I would like to assure you that this is not the case. And I'll tell you why. Because we've come to Syria 10 years ago to make sure that no terrorist enclave was established there, like we saw in some other countries, for example, in Afghanistan. So we have largely accomplished our mission. And even those factions that fought against Assad, they changed internally. It's not for nothing that these days many European countries and the United States, they want to establish ties with them. Well, if there are terrorist organizations, then why do you want to go in there? So it means they have changed, haven't they? So it means that largely we have accomplished our mission there. Secondly, we did not have ground troops deployed in Syria. We have two our bases, a navy base and an air base there. And the ground troops was the armed forces of Syria, and it's not a secret, there were some pro-Iranian military organizations there. And even we weren't fighting any fights in there. So what was happening? When the armed opposition units approached Aleppo, some 30,000 people were defending Aleppo. And then 350 militants entered the city. And the government forces and the pro-Iranian factions, they left without any fight. They just blew up their positions, their fortifications, and they left. And practically the same happened with some few exceptions. It happened across Syria. So while before our Iranian friends, for example, for assistance to move their troops to Syria, this time they asked us for assistance to move Iranian troops out of Syria. So we helped them to move 4,000 Iranian troops back to Tehran. So some of the pro-Iranian troops moved to Lebanon, some pro-Iranian troops moved to Iraq, and the situation is not that simple today in the Syrian Arab Republic. We really hope that peace will be established there, that the situation will be calm. We are in touch with all the groups that have control over the country now, with all the countries in the region, and the vast majority of them, they are saying that they would be interested in seeing our military bases remain in Syria. We will need to think it over, because we need to make a decision. What will be our relations with those political forces that control the situation now and will control the situation in the future in Syria? And our interests must coincide. If we remain there, then we will have to do something for the country where we are stationed. So what would be their interests? What would be able to do for them? We will need to look into that. Both parties will need to look into that, to make certain research, to do research. So we have already suggested our partners the way we can use our bases, our partners both inside Syria and countries in the region. We can use the air base in Khmeimim for the humanitarian relief deliveries. And this suggestion was accepted with understanding, and we were offered to assist. The same goes for the naval base in Tartus. So if you want to present Russia as a weakened state, you're an American, so I would like to remind you of a famous person, a writer. He once mentioned that the rumors about my death are largely exaggerated. And if we have a meeting with the president-elect, with President Trump, I'm sure we will have a lot to speak about. And a question about the assassination of General Kirillov. Okay, you said It was an attempt. Thank you for saying this, because indirectly you admitted that it was a terrorist attack. Why is that? Because this assassination was carried out in the way that is dangerous for many other people. The Kiev regime were carrying out such attacks against many people, like now in Kursk, where they are attacking, implementing strikes against civilians, and they were killing journalists, your colleagues. They were carrying out terrorist attacks against journalists. We have never once heard, I don't mean you personally, but I mean the Western media. We have never heard condemnation for such terrorist attacks. So thank you for mentioning this now. Now let's work some more with the audience, because there is a lot of interest. I can see the BRICS, Tatarstan. My apologies. I would like to address your American colleague. Can you hear me? Do you hear me? If you have any more questions, you can ask them, please. Well, let's travel to Kazan for a while. Well, you can give it more thought if you want to, and we will speak to Tatars, and then we will speak to Americans.
My question is, are you prepared to compromise in any way over Ukraine? You say that Kyiv should compromise, that the Ukrainians should compromise, but what are you prepared to offer in potential negotiations, potentially led by President-elect Trump?
Yes, I understand. Sorry for having missed this very important part of your question. Politics is in the art of compromise, and we've always said that we are ready for negotiations and for compromise. It's just that the other party, the adversary, has declined negotiations, but we have always been ready for that. And the result of a negotiation is always a compromise. We had reached an agreement, essentially, in Istanbul, late in 2022. And I'm repeating for the umpteenth time that the Ukrainian party had signed this document, had approved this document. So they were agreeing with that. And then they refused to sign it, because the well-groomed colleague of yours, Mr. Johnson, had come there and told them to fight till the last Ukrainian. And this is what they're doing, soon to run out of Ukrainians to fight. We are ready. We just need the other part to be ready as well, both for negotiations and for compromise. Thank you. We have Kazan waiting here. We have talked with the Americans, now let's talk to Tatars. Artur Haliulov, Tatar Inform. So BRICS, after the Kazan summit, has reached a whole new level. That's obvious. I really can't remember so many, dozens of world leaders of the caliber of Xi Jinping, of Modi, and so on. So what about your expectations of the new world order? And last year, answering my question, you said that Tatarstan is an example of peaceful coexistence of many confessions and nationalities. The same can be said of BRICS, because BRICS unites so many, so different countries. Do you consider the possibility of establishing BRICS headquarters in Kazan? Artur, you said you can't remember so many world leaders assembling in Moscow. Yeah, you're right. There have never been so many leaders assembling at once in Moscow, but they have been in Kazan, and yes, thank you for giving us this opportunity. Well, we're not creating a BRICS headquarters as such. There are offices in capital cities that work for the bloc. But of course we're going to use all the capabilities of Tatarstan's capital city Indeed, Kazan has made an amazing leap in its development. It is truly, without exaggeration, I think, one of the best cities in Europe. We're proud of Moscow, one of the biggest and best cities in the world, but Kazan is developing at an amazing pace. Once, when I was visiting Kazan, we went to a house literally dug in earth on the outskirts of Kazan. But it's amazing.
Замечательный город, и метро появилось, мы тогда с Мерсием Решаевичем говорили о том, что это нужно, и сделали это. И новый руководитель, Остап Нугалевич, подхватил эту эстафету, очень эффективно работает. Ну и вообще в Казани, в Татарстане люди живут талантливые, там и люди разных национальностей проживают в мире, согласии, уважают друг друга, традицию друг друга уважают, ходят друг к другу в гости, я знаю, на религиозные праздники. Очень здорово, очень хорошо у вас получается. Можно только поздравить. Ну, а есть еще момент, на который я хотел бы обратить внимание. Вы сказали, что БРИКС развивается как инструмент противодействия Западу. Это не так, вы ошибаетесь. БРИКС не является инструментом противодействия Западу. Мы не работаем...
Instrument to counter the West. We're not working against anyone. We are working for in favor of our interests and the interests of the organization's members. We're not trying to build any kind of adversarial narrative or agenda within the organization. The organization, however, is developing very rapidly. It's expanded. Its membership has become bigger, and there is a great number of countries who are showing interest in developing BRICS as an organization, because our work within BRICS is based on respect for the interests of one another. All issues are decided by consensus, which is of the utmost importance. There are no small or big countries within BRICS, no countries that are more or less developed. This is an association that brings countries together who have only one interest, that is their national development. We are using the existing tools and creating new ones to achieve better economic growth, to reconfigure our economic structure to make sure that BRICS is at the helm of this forward movement. And we'll do everything now to make sure that it stays so in future. Let's give our colleagues within the audience a chance to ask their questions. I see a new media. It's very popular, even though it's unconventional. It's called Readovka, Maxim Dolgov Readovka edition. Mr. President, for many countries of the world, the issue of aging and depopulation is a burning issue. Russia has not been spared this fate. Many measures have been put into practice in order to boost our birth rates. Recently, you have signed into law the establishment of a council on family policy and on demographic policy. But what happens if these measures do not prove to be sufficient? We'll enhance them, we'll improve on them. Please sit down. This is a question of utmost import, and it's a key issue not just for Russia but for the rest of the world, because many countries across the world are facing the same problem as we are. During the Soviet times, the birth rate stood at around 2%. The birth rate is basically the number of children per one woman. During the Soviet times, there was a 2% growth at a certain point in time. Sometime in the past, several years ago, we managed to reach 1.7% or so, but unfortunately right now it stands at 1.44%, which is very little. But unfortunately, many other countries are facing the same problem. Neighboring countries like Finland, I think it's even less. In Norway, it's the same. In Spain, the birth rate is even lower than that, and many other countries are facing birth rates lower than that. Even though some countries, developed countries like Japan or South Korea, have very low birth rates, it's 0.7% in South Korea. So we are in a better position somewhat. But in order to make sure our population is replenished, we have to raise it to 2.1%. And in order to make sure that our population keeps growing, we have to secure a 2.3% birth rate. I spoke at length about what had been happening in the previous decades. We had a trough during the Second World War in 43, 44, and then after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we had a similar plunge in the birth rates. I'll spend 2 minutes to speak about that. So when a small generation reaches the age of giving birth to children, it also gives birth to children to a smaller generation. And unfortunately, these trends in Russia have overlapped. The trough after the Second World War, and then the plunge at the top after the disintegration of the Soviet Union. So it's kind of a sign line. And unfortunately, we had a 30% plunge of women who are capable of giving birth, who are in this age. And we need more girls, more women. What are we doing to rectify this situation? We have put forth a whole program dedicated to this issue. We are improving the instruments, enhancing them all the time, year in, year out. There are certain tweaks and changes. We have the allowance to families with children, which is an efficient instrument. We are paying this allowance starting from the pregnancy and by the time the children reach the age of majority, that is 18 years. And more than 10 million children are getting this allowance, and around 320,000 pregnant women. Secondly, we have a unique instrument we have come up with, which is unique in the world. That is the maternity capital, which we are always refunding and rebuilding. We're also keeping the instrument of family mortgage at 6%. We will talk about mortgage, I think, later. We'll talk about construction, but this family mortgage is a family we are keeping active. We are also paying 450,000 rubles to every family with a third child to make sure they are capable of paying back that mortgage. We're also improving everything, healthcare that is related to, and education that is related to maternity, to childhood, and we're also going to continue doing that. I'll take this opportunity to address all the leaders of the Russian regions. This is where you should start in the morning and finish in the evening, because it's a challenge for many countries across the world and for Russia in particular, because the people, population is the backbone of a country. Territory is good, but it has to be populated with citizens. So I think we're doing a lot, but apparently it's not sufficient. And we can say that we're doing some useful things, but we will only have succeeded once we have reached the objectives that I've just enumerated. Actually, we're getting many messages from families with many children. There is this problem. There is this single allowance. But once the mean salary is superior to the minimum level established at the region, then they are not getting that allowance. And unfortunately, even if the discrepancy is very small, they're not getting the money. We are giving the floor to Anna from Surgut. She's got 5 children. Anna, over to you. Hello, Mr. President. My name is Anna Alikova. I was born in Surgut. I live in Surgut in Khanty-Mansi Autonomous District. I've got 5 children. One of them has a disability. Starting from July 2023, I've been applying for an allowance every month, but I'm denied that allowance because my salary is a little more than the minimum wage. Once it was 400 rubles. So when I get a mention for the child who has a disability, is that considered as part of my revenue? Why is it taken into account? You know, my spouse is getting an official salary, and when they take into account all of my revenue, they are calculating that based on our revenue before tax. But the thing is, we're paying taxes, so we're getting less money than what they are calculating. And another problem, the thing is, we have to go on vacation somewhere, just as any other family. But just the day before yesterday, we looked at the tickets. A one-way ticket costs 140,000 rubles or so per one person. So what can we do about that? Anna, you've got 5 children, right? My congratulations. That's great. You're a happy person. That's for sure. And many people in our audience should congratulate you and should also emulate you and your family. Secondly, the thing is, when the income is calculated, they take into account everything based on your income the previous year. Because, you know, I've just cited our figures for the economic growth, but the thing is, this is just conjecture, so they can only do that based on your income the previous year. We could think about that. I'll ask Tatiana Golikova as well as our Ministry of Labor and Social Security, but this is not the most important thing. The thing is, there are other reasons that might explain the problem that you are facing when your income is a little bit more than your minimum wage. And once there is this discrepancy, then you're not gonna get the allowance. This is a very formal approach. We were thinking about how to avoid this similar situation, the one your family is facing, and we have a solution. We have to recalculate the income tax, and then we have to give at least a 7% tax rebate based on the tax your family has paid. I think this will be able to compensate the money you're not getting due to the fact that you're not entitled to the allowance. We'll have a look at that. We'll see how it works. The government believes that this will be able to give you back the money you are not getting normally due to the fact that they're denying you the allowance. This is a recent decision. We are going to look at how it's being implemented. Secondly, you spoke about travel and going on vacation. We know about the problem. I've spoken to the leaders and to the heads of the industry. You know, our aviation industry is very stable. Last year it was 105 million passengers. This year it's going to be 111 million passengers that have used air transport. So we are coming up with a solution. There are going to be benefits provided to children with, to families with many children. There has to be a 50% discount or so. But the thing is, air companies are giving their own benefits, but this is not a standard tariff, and it's just a little lower than the normal tariff, and they're kind of circumventing the rule. This practice needs to be stopped. I fully agree with you. a full discount has to be provided. So I would like to ask the government to resolve that before January the 14th next year. And as for this 7% tax rebate on income tax, this is a solution we're going to look into and see how it works. Thank you. I think there's another follow-up question about demographics somewhere in the room. Yes, please. Where are you? Dr. K, Chechen Republic. Mr. President, you are talking about demographic growth, how important it is, and you are citing the example of the Chechen Republic. Yes, not just the Chechen Republic, but also the Republic of Tiva, because these two regions are very good in terms of demographics. Probably we should provide some special program to the regions that are most efficient in addressing the demographic challenge. And secondly, you adopted the three-stage strategy for a high-speed road. Last year, the third stage is Moscow-Adler. And many experts believe that if Grozny and Makhachkala are included into this road, then this direction is going to be more efficient. Thank you for the question.
Well, you have mentioned the fact that Chechnya is doing well with respect to demographics. It is true, both Chechnya and Tuva are doing well in this respect. Two regions in the Federation. Do we need to take any additional steps or measures? Shall we think here and the rest should take as a role model? Probably. With respect to regions that have lower birth rates that are below 1.41 factor, they need a special program to support birth rates. There are 35 such regions, and a separate program to the tune of 75 billion rubles for the next forthcoming years is planned. And as regards Moscow, Adler, Grozny, Makhachkala, high-speed road, we have several issues to resolve. We need to resolve the Black Sea passage and the entrance to Sochi, the exit to Sochi from that road, and eliminate the traffic congestion in the vicinity of Adler. During the high tourist season, people spend hours in those traffic jams, and first of all, they built an alternate near Sochi, and the existing road is a bottleneck, and then the two traffic flows merge in front of Adler, and we need to resolve this bottleneck, widen that bottleneck to avoid traffic jams. So either there or during on the spot next to Adler, Chechen construction companies will be working. As regards Grozny and Makhachkala, it is probably a proper thing to do, a good thing to do, a good idea. We'll think of it later. Next stage. Chechnya main roads. You had a similar question. I just don't want to offend people. Hamazat Batukayev, Chechen State TV and radio company, Grozny. Yes, this was part of our question. Thank you, but you gave an assessment to the city of Kazan while talking to my Tatar colleague and mentioned the BRICS summit, and you also visited Grozny. Is it a beautiful city? A wonderful, a marvelous city. It is a contemporary Russian marvel. You know, I flew over Grozny in those hard, dire years of fight against international terrorism. It was in debris, and with machine gun firing, and many people thought of moving the regional capital to Gudermes, but the first president and the incumbent president said no, because Grozny is the traditional capital for the Chechen people, and we will restore it. So the results since then are marvelous, and this is the merit of the incumbent president, and the entire Chechen people is credited. Also, their hard-working character, and look at the mosque, spectacular architectural edifices and forms. We take pride, we cannot but take pride in what has been done in Chechnya and Grozny over the past years. Congratulations on that. Thank you, Mr. President. I recall your words when you were at the mosque talking to the Mufti, and you said that the Islam and the Orthodox Christianity, all the conventional faiths, have one single root, moral root. And let me ask a question about the Russian Special Troops University. It now has your name. It's named after the commander-in-chief. What is your take on that university, on that visit? Well, I think it is very useful, very instrumental, and Russian Guard forces have been using that, and fighters from across the country are trained there, and some of the fighters that are now in the conflict zone from Chechnya and from many other regions, they were trained in that center, which plays a pivotal role in enhancing the defensive capability of the entire nation. Okay, I can see our Chinese friends from Xinhua agency wishing to ask a question. Mr. President, good day. My name is Huan He. I represent Xinhua News Agency. So glad to ask a question today, to be able to ask a question. I have two questions. The first one, what is your take on the current state of the development of the Chinese-Russian relations? Will you tell us about the main outcomes of the cooperation between our countries? And my second question, next year, China and Russia will mark 80th anniversary of the victory in World War II, and 80th anniversary since the United Nations were founded. According to your opinion, what is the role of interaction and coordination between China and Russia in maintaining global strategic stability and international justice? Thank you very much. Well, we speak a lot about the bilateral interaction of China and Russia. Next year will mark 75th anniversary since the diplomatic ties were established. Over the past years, a lot happened, and we've gone through a lot together. And in the recent decades, the level and the standards, the quality of our relations have reached an unprecedented level, and we've never seen in our history before. I'll mention the economic component, but this is built on mutual trust and confidence. All that we do and the way we act is built upon full trust and confidence on both sides. We do nothing that would run counter to our interests, and we have been acting in the interests of the Chinese people and the Russian people. And as regards economic interaction, well, we have 220, 230, or even 40, according to the Chinese statistics, of billion USD of mutual trade, which is very good. Over the past year, despite the high base, we still have seen a moderate pace of growth of about 3%. And my second point is about investments. We have around 600 projects of mutual investments to the tune of $200 billion, so which means that our future interaction is safeguarded. And another important component is cultural and humanitarian interaction. We hold dual years of culture and youth exchanges. that are very important for specific cohorts of our population. And this is the foundation for economic and political interaction. Also, our regional interaction is of significance. Heads of regions speak to one another. And Malta and vodka is on the table, but, you know, they know the happy medium. They don't overkill, so they have some personal chemistry. I mean the residents of the regions, neighboring regions, and student and the university exchanges also take place. Then, mentioning the great patriotic war, Russia and China were the countries that suffered most during the Second World War, but still gained a victory. So the casualties were colossal. We lost 25 to 27 million people, and China lost even more, around 30 million people in casualties. So the things that the Japanese militarists did on Chinese land are horrendous, and the Chinese people went through that ordeal, and we stood side by side then, and we stand side by side now, which is a most important factor of global stability. And originally, the United Nations was established for the sake of this stability, and the Permanent Security Council members include Russia and China, and we almost always coordinate our approaches on international arena. And definitely this is a very important pillar of international affairs, so we'll keep acting in this vein. Please convey my best wishes to the leader of the People's Republic of China, a person whom I believe to be my personal friend, President Xi. So please, I call on everybody to ask no more than one question and be succinct. Kuban region in the central sector. Please ask yours. Good afternoon. Krasnodar region, the Lights of Kuban newspaper, Marina Smirnova. The question is as follows. Nowadays, the talks are rife about the migration issue. Ways to resolve it are entertained. The Krasnodar territory is a big region and cohesive one. Still, we have the issue of migration. We have restrictions in place. Only the construction sector allows patents. And what is your take on these restrictions? And we lack manpower, and what is the way out? So this is a very sensitive and acute issue, not only for this country, for Europe also, and for even more acute for Europe. So we lack manpower. Yes, this is true. We have unemployment at 2.3%, which means it's almost inexistent. Well, our businesses and ministries have been telling me that there's a shortage in the construction sector and manufacturing. It's hundreds of thousands of workers. This is a hard fact. What the way out might be, you ask. So first, in order to reduce the number of the labor migrants, one needs to enhance the labor productivity using new technological solutions that do not require lots of low-skilled workers. And hence, you should focus on high-tech sectors. So there will be no need to bring in more low-skilled migrants. Second, if it's inevitable, we need to act together with our partners, like in some of the countries, like Central Asian countries, in order to prepare people in those republics in advance. They should get to know the Russian language, learn the Russian language, and Russian language studies centers should be established, and the prospective migrants should be knowledgeable of the Russian legislation, and definitely requirements for those already on our soil must be tightened. They should respect the environment they live and work in, and this is the responsibility of the law enforcement bodies. So there are two components here, the economic and the law enforcement ones, and they should merge. There should be synergy between them. We had lots of debates about establishing a separate body or just leaving it as a division within the Interior Ministry, but I believe still that it should stay inside the Interior, and actually a powerful heavy-duty center should be established that should be in constant touch with the economic agencies and ministries and regions, definitely, to resolve those issues and keep track of things. And there's a great deal of regulation on the regional level, and that must be governed from a single center. And later on, as the situation gets mature and they acquire new competences in that center, a brand new agency may be established in the future, but it should have the law enforcement component and the economic one.
Certain steps in this direction have already been taken or have adopted a law. The State Duma has
adopted a law that stipulates that